Hello, and welcome to our second lecture. In the first lecture, I summarized migration, global migration. Today, I'm going to dwell on immigration and show the distinction between immigration and other forms of migration. Permit me to share my slides. So the topic is immigration phenomenon. When people move from their betting countries to another country with the intention of not returning to their betting countries, that is immigration. The other forms of migration is mainly for a period time, for a short period of time. People move for tourism purposes, as we saw in the first lecture, or for medical, or for education. It could take a very short period, or maybe periods of, it takes you to graduate from the school you attend, maybe 4 years program or up to your PhD program, but all those are not immigration. So it's every cross-national mobility is immigration when there is the intention to settle in the country you have migrated to. We already saw the various reasons for which people migrate from one place to the other. Certain documents must be obtained for every cross-national movement. So it could be all kinds of visas, either education or some medical visas or tourism visas, but there must be some documentation. Just don't move from your country to another country free. There is usually a border protection for various reasons, which are beyond the discussion for today. So countries protect themselves from other countries by ensuring that there's a need for the appropriate documentation to be obtained for every cross-national mobility. So, but for immigration purposes, there are certain documents. The immigration documents are different from other forms of migration. For the purpose of the United States of America, it is the green card that actually signifies immigration, and not the visiting visa or J1 visa or F1 visa or whatever type of visa they call it, or medical visas. So you have to have the immigration visa to be qualified as an immigrant into the country. So some countries are usually very liberal with immigration, others are close-ended, very strict about it. And in the first lecture, we saw some countries that are more open to immigration, and you see a lot of people flock to those countries. So for the purpose of this immigration, actually the documentation for immigrants must be distinctive from other forms of migration. Remember that the distinctive factor is that people who are immigrants move for the purpose of not returning to their birth countries. It does not really matter whether they have the appropriate documents for that migration or not. As long as your intention is, let me go into that country, I don't intend to go back to my country again. It might take a longer time for them to regularize their papers as immigrants, but the intention is there, and therefore such people are immigrants. And we see that how it happens in the forms and or types of immigrants that we have. So classes or types of immigrants. There are immigrants who go for family reunion. These ones generally have their immigrant visa issued at the time they are migrating to that other country. And family reunion visas are visas that enable people who have come into a particular country and become citizens or obtain the appropriate paper to qualify them to file for their family members. And so you see that parents might come in first, and after they regularize their papers as immigrants, they get the appropriate authority and they can file for their children or for their dependents. The same thing goes for children who might come in first, and after obtaining their proper immigrant documentation, they can now obtain their approval to file for their parents, and their parents will come and join them. Also, a spouse may be the one that has gone ahead and left the wife and children, or just wife, back home. And after he regularizes his or her paper, he can now file, he or she can now file for the other spouse to join. The spousal joining could either mean that the one spouse had gone ahead and now, after obtaining the proper documentation, now files for the other. Or it could be that somebody who was maybe a second generation immigrant, in other words, your parents came, they had you here, and when it's time for you to marry, you go back to the place, the country where your parents are coming from, and then get a wife there, or a husband there, and then file for such a person. So it could be filed for the purpose of the United States. It could be filed as a fiancé visa, or a fiancé visa, or for a spousal visa. So usually such filing takes shorter period than when you file for maybe your siblings to come and join you after you have become a citizen of the United States of America. So spousal visa could be either that spouse filing was an immigrant, or was born here, or grew up here, came in as a child, but later decides to, maybe from communication or whatever, is able to get somebody wants to marry from the country that originally came from. So other class or type of visa that could happen that will make you an immigrant will be visa conversion. In visa conversion, you actually came in as maybe a tourist and you overstayed and you are not able to go back, and then you decide to begin to work your way through getting an immigrant visa. Working your way could mean that maybe you marry a citizen here, or you get a job and your job files for you because you are so important in the job that they file for you to get you an immigrant visa. And from that immigrant visa, you now begin to work your way towards citizenship, where it is possible for you to become a citizen. All right, so conversion could also be that maybe you're a student, you schooled here, after that you work, and then you work to some extent that you are not able to get an immigrant visa. In Canada, it's a lot simpler than the United States of America and the UK, because in Canada, when you come in as a student, you can actually determine your path to residency, to immigrant status, because when you finish from your school, you graduate, you can see yourself getting a work permit, from work permit to immigrant visa, and from immigrant visa, you also work yourself up to citizenship. But in the United States, it's tough. They will give you, it's tougher. They will give you a work permit, 2-year work permit after you graduate. But becoming an immigrant is a much tougher agenda in the United States than it is in Canada. And so you don't have a clear path. Most times people just get married after their school, or maybe if they are lucky enough to have an employer who think they are indispensable, that fight for them, and then they're able to convert. There are certain categories of visa that is inconvertible. And so you must go back to your country before you can change your visa status. So irregular or illegal undocumented immigrants are those who have come in as tourists, overstayed, and if they go back, they cannot come back, because once, for instance, in the United States, you have even if you have a multiple 2-year multiple visa, but when you come in, you are stamped for, it usually lasts for 6 months. If you overstay that 6 months and you don't go back before the 6 months, then you are not able to come back again. And so most of these people, what they do is that they stay back, because if they go anyway, they cannot come back. So at that point, you become an irregular immigrant or undocumented immigrant, as Americans will have it. So when you are an undocumented immigrant, you stand a lot of risk. There's a lot of risk on your head, because it's just for you not to fall foul of any policy of the country. Law enforcement officers will be after you. And once you are caught in any irregular activity or act, then you are deported to your country. If you are a documented immigrant, if you fall foul of the rules and regulations of the United States of America, you go to jail, and in jail you can be cared for, and then you serve your jail term and come back and continue. But if you are undocumented, the moment they catch you, there is no jail, because you go there and incur costs for the government, so they deport you to your country. So for undocumented immigrants, it's better for you to take all the proper steps to ensure that you don't fall foul of any of the rules, and you are not in the web, you are not caught in the web of the law enforcement officers. Now, the most important thing about migration, as we saw in the first lecture, is not just the number that migrates, but the welfare of the people that migrate. And so immigrants, their welfare is very important to many people and to international organizations. So who are now responsible for the welfare of these immigrants? The first is the government. The government sets the pedestal by setting the policies, the rules and regulations that will enable the immigrants to quickly integrate within the system and then improve their welfare. For instance, in the United States of America, there is this opportunity. If you come in as an immigrant, say a family reunion, in the next few weeks, you get your social security number, meaning that you now have a tag, you are part of this system. And then after a few weeks, you get your green card. That enables you to apply for anything that any citizen can apply, and enables you to do whatever that you want to do. You can get a job. The employers will know that you have the authority to work in the United States. And then you are able to really fit within the system as much as your propensity can carry you. So the government plays a veritable role in ensuring that the welfare of immigrants are well cared for. The immigrants themselves have a lot of roles to play. So you as an immigrant cannot just come in and feel that the government we take care of everything that you need and everything your children need. Yes, certain areas. For instance, the government of the United States of America has a no child left behind policy. So whether you are legal or illegal immigrant, you are actually, your children that are under the age of 18 are entitled to free education. And so nobody can stop you or your children from going to school. But you have the responsibility of feeding your children, providing their medical insurance, except when you cannot, and because no child can be left to suffer, and then the government will intervene in that. And what that may lead to is that you as an immigrant may lose the custody of your children, because social welfare will take responsibility for your children. You don't want to do that. So immigrants have a responsibility of ensuring that they work, that they cater for their families. They have to take the steps to seek for where the jobs are and seek their health welfare and take care of the responsibilities that every other citizen take care of in the country that you have come to. So immigrants have a lot of role to play to ensure that their welfare is well cared for. The established society also have roles to play. In most places, immigrants suffer discrimination, racial and ethnic discrimination. So because there is a lot of pushback from the established community. And because of this pushback, the immigrants are not able to express themselves. There is all kinds of requirements from them. There is their professions and their academic qualifications are mostly discountenanced and discounted. And because of that, they are not able to optimize their potentials. And most people actually start from the beginning again. So the established community has a lot of role to play to embrace these immigrants. A lot of countries have used immigrants to ensure a better development in their countries. But most times you find out that the immigrants are the lower cadre of these professional, their professional organizations and everything that they do. So the top is populated by established society and not the immigrants now take the crumbs. The international organizations also have, in fact, they play a veritable role in the welfare of the immigrants. The United Nations and World Health Organization are typical of these, and there are several international organizations that actually cater for the welfare of immigrants. If you take the refugees, for instance, you find that the eyes of the international organizations are always on the countries that have taken refugees to ensure that these refugees are well treated in the countries where they have gone. The same thing for other immigrants, whether you are voluntary immigrants or involuntary immigrants, international organizations ensure that the human rights of the immigrants are well protected. And there are various ways they do it, but we are going to look at that of MIPEX, the measures that MIPEX use to determine how good every immigrant receiving country treats the immigrants. And that's what we're going to see in the next two slides. So how are the welfare of immigrants measured by the Migration Integration Policy Index? Okay, so MIPEX. The first one is that they want to measure the access to nationality. If a country is receiving immigrants, can these immigrants, remember that immigrants have the document. They have the documents to say, okay, you have been received in this country as an immigrant. So the first measure is, can these immigrants be able to become citizens in your country? For some countries, it's impossible to, or near impossible to become citizens, no matter how long you have been an immigrant. But so for some other countries, you can actually determine a path as to, you can say for sure, at so year, I will become a citizen. So if you come, for instance, into the United States with an immigrant visa, except you do anything that violates the rules of the land, that can truncate things for you, you can say, okay, generally, maybe in 5 to 6 years, I'll become a citizen of the United States of America. So when you, as a potential immigrant, want to migrate, you want to see those countries that, if becoming a citizen of that country is your goal, is this a country I can go to, or should I just forget about this country and seek another country? Okay, so United States of America and Canada, the North Americans, are a lot more adaptable to making people citizens than other European countries, and of course the Asian countries are much, much tougher. So they are also measured, the immigrant receiving countries are measured by the anti-discrimination. Is the government of that country, the recipient country, able to bring out policies that reduces racial and ethnic and religious and national discrimination to immigrants? Because when there is high discrimination, then integration becomes very difficult for immigrants. So they are measuring how the policies of that country enhances the integration of the immigrants through their anti-discriminatory policies. So again, it differs from one country to the other. Another one is education. The immigrants' children, when they come into the country, are they able to access educational system as good as the established community? So some countries, it's easier to do that. In the United States of America, for instance, like I said earlier, the children under the age of 18 are all having access to education the same way the other, even if you are coming in without being an English speaking immigrant, they have plans to ensure that these children are brought to tips on English like the other, so that the other children that are schooling in that school, so that they are not feeling different. So you find that most of the time, these children, they come in, they can't speak English, they can't, so they give them facilities and have courses that enable them to transition from their own language into the English speaking, so that they will be at par with the other children in the school. So family reunion. As you have come into this country, you came in as a parent, do you have the opportunity to, after becoming a citizen, to bring in your children or your siblings? So you're measuring that too. If you are migrating, you immigrated to another country, is there a possibility that in the future I can actually bring in my siblings, my parents, my children? So these are also part of the measures that MIPEX uses to see how good a recipient country is about the immigrants. And so if you feel that you don't care when you go to another country and you can't bring in your other relations, family members, then you don't look at that as a particular option that you want to explore. But if it's important to you that if I leave my wife and children in my home country and become a citizen of India, and I can't bring them, I know I can't bring them because they will never give me permission to bring them to join me, then you don't want to go to such a country. But when you look at a country that can permit you in the future to bring your family, then you probably want to explore such for the purpose of your migration. Health. Is a health system responsive to immigrants' needs? There are some countries, they are very good at taking care of the health of their immigrants and even visitors are that, for that matter. As long as you're in the country, you're in the system, they take care of you. It doesn't matter whether you are having your citizenship or your residence permit, as long as you are human and you are sick. And here again, Canada is very good. But in other countries, you have to work out your insurance, which can be very expensive, like in the United States of America. You have to take care of the insurance for your family and so on and so forth. So your welfare, as far as health is concerned, could be a problem, an issue for you. So you as a person that is planning to migrate, you want to look at that and see how good can I get my health taken care of in the country I'm migrating to. Labor market mobility. And this is very key. In the first lecture, we saw that majority of the immigrants or migrants are in the working age bracket of 20 to 60. And these people want to move when they come to a particular country. So first, is there good job access? Do they have access to good jobs? And even when they have good access to good job, what is the potential for rising in the organization? Or are they stagnated at the bottom line? Are they discriminated against so much that they are stagnated at the bottom line? So that the top is populated by established citizens, but the immigrants are always on the ground. So the MIPEX is also measuring this. Is there an equal opportunity, the quality? Is there an equal right for people to grow and develop and become potential leaders in the country. Permanent residency. Like I said before, Canada is very good with this. If you come in as a student in Canada, you can actually project when you become a permanent resident. Some reasons may make it difficult for you to get it at that point, but there's always a good path. But in the United States, if you are here as a student, you are just a student. So when your student visa expires, and there's no guarantee for permanent residency, but in some countries it is there. But it all depends again what your goal is. If you're now seeking for a place where you can become a permanent resident and eventually transition to maybe citizenship, then you want to look at those countries that you can see a path. After paying your school fees for many years, you'll see a path to becoming a citizen or a permanent resident. And finally, the political participation is one other measure that the MIPEX uses to determine how well a country is doing regarding immigrants integration. For some countries, as an immigrant, it is completely a bar. You cannot go into their political system. But in other countries, there might be liberal something. And you who have been a politician in your country, you want to look at it. So if I go there, can I practice what I have been used to? What makes me think? Can I be a politician? Can I join the political movement in the country? So you want to look at that also. So you see that the entire 8 measures that MIPEX uses to measure the progress or the integration of immigrants in their host communities and countries are predicated on 2 good principles. One, to determine the countries that are doing good as well as far as immigrant integration is concerned, because that is a key thing. Like, it is not just the number that migrates, but the welfare. How are these immigrants taken care of? Then the second element is it helps you as a potential immigrant or an immigrant already in a particular country. As a potential immigrant, which country should I go to based on the most important goal that I have for migrating to out of my own birthing country? And for you who are already in the system, is there a potential for me to go to another country instead of being here if I cannot obtain? For instance, if it is very important to you that you become a politician and you are in a particular country that you have seen that it's a bar, you can never enter, you can never be a politician there. Is there another country I can actually move to from this country to that country to become a good, practice my political ambition? And so you want to look at all those things. So in all this, we know that immigrants are distinctive from ordinary migration or other forms of migration because they have the intention to completely settle. They can only now become visitors in other countries or in their birthing country, but their own home becomes the country they have migrated to. And all these measures enable them to know which country to go to. So in the next lecture, we are going to be focusing on specifics of American integration, American immigration. But today we have just touched on immigration on the surface. I want to thank you for listening, and I do hope that you will follow me in other lectures. And at some point, we're going to have a webinar where you can ask questions and then you are giving answers. Thank you again for listening, and God bless. All right then. So I'll be seeing you guys another time. Thank you and bye for now.